In the heart of Willow Creek, nestled between rolling hills and flowing streams, stood the cozy home of Sharon and Jason. The town, with its cobblestone streets and charming cafes, had always been Jason's world. He thrived as the owner of the local hardware store, a business passed down through generations. His roots ran deep in Willow Creek, and he cherished its simplicity and warmth. Sharon, however, was a different story. A graphic designer with a vibrant creative spirit, she longed for the energy and opportunities of city life. Their home, once a sanctuary of shared dreams, now echoed with the unspoken tension of their conflicting desires. One evening, as they sat in their living room, the conversation took a familiar turn. "Jason, have you thought more about moving to the city?" Sharon asked, her voice laced with a... Jason, looking up from his book, gave a resigned sigh. "Sharon, we've talked about this. I love it here. My business, our friends. My whole life is here in Willow Creek. But don't you see? That's just it. Your life is here. But what about mine? I feel so confined in this small town. The city offers so much more for my career." Sharon pleaded, her eyes reflecting a mix of frustration and longing. Jason set his book aside, turning to face her. "I understand, but this is a huge change. I can't just uproot everything on a whim. Our life here is stable, predictable. Isn't there a way to find what you need without leaving Willow Creek?" Sharon's expression faltered. "Predictable is just another word for stagnant, Jason. I need growth, challenges. I can't bloom in a place that feels so Jason reached out, taking her hand. "I love you, Sharon, and I want you to be happy. But I can't pretend that the idea of leaving everything behind doesn't scare me." Sharon withdrew her hand gently. "And staying here, not fulfilling my potential." The conversation ended as many others had in a silent stalemate, with unspoken words hanging heavily in the air. They loved each other, but their paths were diverging, creating a rift that widened with each passing day. As Jason lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he couldn't shake the feeling of impending change. Sharon's restless energy, once a source of joy, now felt like a harbinger of uncertainty. He feared that the life they had built together in Willow Creek might not be enough to bridge the growing gap between them. Little did Jason know that a business trip to a nearby city would soon bring an unexpected twist to their lives, challenging the very foundation of their relationship. A week after their conversation, Jason prepared for a business trip to the neighboring city. The purpose was to explore potential expansion opportunities for his hardware store, but his mind was clouded with thoughts of Sharon and their unresolved conflict. Sharon watched him pack, her heart heavy. "You'll be back by Friday, right?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, the conference ends Thursday, but I thought I might visit a care home while I'm there. They need some supplies, and I promised to help out," Jason replied, folding his clothes neatly into his suitcase. Sharon managed a smile. "That's kind of you, Jason. You always had a big heart." Jason looked up, meeting her eyes. "We're okay, aren't we, Sharon?" She hesitated, then nodded. "We're okay. We just have some things to figure out." The drive to the city was a blur for Jason. He attended the conference half-heartedly, his thoughts constantly drifting back to Sharon. On the last day, he made his way to the care home. It was a modest facility, but well-maintained and filled with warmth. As he handed over the supplies to the care home manager, his attention was caught by a quiet corner where a man in a wheelchair was staring out the window, his gaze distant and forlorn. Something about him seemed familiar. Curiosity piqued. Jason approached the man. "Excuse me, I don't mean to intrude, but do I know you?" The man turned, and recognition dawned in his eyes. "Jason? Jason Miller? It's me, Edward from college." Jason's eyes widened. "Edward, I can't believe it's you. How long has it..." "Too long," Edward said, a hint of sadness in his voice. Life took a rather unexpected... Jason noticed the wheelchair. "What happened, if you don't mind me asking?" Edward sighed. A car accident 2 years ago left me like this. He gestured to his paralyzed legs, but the hardest part was losing Sharon. Jason's heart skipped a beat. Sharon? Your wife was named Sharon? Edward nodded, a tear rolling down his cheek. Yes, my Sharon. She died in the accident. I've been alone ever since. Jason felt a chill run down his spine. Edward, I'm so sorry, but this is going to sound crazy. I'm married to a woman named Sharon. Edward's expression turned to one of confusion. That's quite a coincidence. My Sharon, she was everything to me. I keep her picture with me always. He reached into a small bag attached to his wheelchair, pulling out a framed photograph. Jason took the photograph, his hands trembling. It was Sharon, his Sharon. The same bright eyes, the same warm smile. This is my wife, Jason stammered, disbelief and shock overtaking him. Edward looked up, equally stunned. But how? She? Jason, his mind racing, struggled to make sense of the situation. I need to find out what's going on, Edward. This can't be a coincidence. As Jason left the care home, his heart was heavy with questions. The woman he loved, the woman he called his wife, was shrouded in mystery. The comfortable life he knew in Willow Creek was unraveling, leaving him on the threshold of a truth he could never have imagined. The drive back to Willow Creek was a blur for Jason. His mind reeled with the image of Sharon in the photograph and Edward's words echoing in his ears. He struggled to reconcile the loving, vibrant Sharon he knew with the woman in Edward's story. The questions multiplied and twisted in his mind, forming a knot of confusion and dread. Upon reaching home, Jason found Sharon in the garden, her hands busy with the earth. She looked up, her face brightening at his return. "You're back early," she remarked, brushing dirt off her hands. Jason held up the photograph, his voice steady but his eyes betraying his turmoil. "Sharon, I need you to explain this." Sharon's smile faltered as she took the photograph. Her eyes widened in shock, a gasp escaping her lips. Where did you get this?" "It was with an old college friend, Edward. He said his wife, named Sharon, died in a car accident. He's paralyzed because of that accident," Jason said, watching her closely. Sharon's face drained of color, her body swaying slightly. "Edward, I can't believe he's here." And in that state, she whispered, more to herself than to Jason. Jason stepped closer, his voice rising with emotion. "Sharon, what aren't you telling me? Were you his wife?" Sharon sat down on the garden bench, her hands trembling. "Jason, it's not what you think. I was going to tell you, but I couldn't find the right time." "Tell me what, Sharon?" "That you had another life before me. That you were married to a man who thinks you're dead." Jason's voice cracked with the weight of his emotions. Sharon's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, I was married to Edward, but it was a lifetime ago. I thought he had died in that accident. I was told he didn't make it." Jason felt his world spinning. "But you're here, alive. How? Why did you hide this from me?" Sharon reached for his hand, but Jason pulled away. "After the accident, I was lost. I thought I had lost everything. When I learned Edward was gone, I couldn't bear to stay. I needed to start over, to leave that painful life behind. I changed my name, moved here, and then I met you. I never meant to deceive you, Jason. I love you. But your past, our present, it's all built on a lie, Sharon," Jason said, his heart aching. "I need to understand everything, the whole—" Sharon nodded, wiping her tears. "I'll tell you everything, Jason. But please know my love for you was, and is, real. That's the one truth in all things." As the sun set, casting long shadows across the garden, Jason sat beside Sharon, bracing himself to hear the story of a life he never knew she had. It was a tale of love, loss, and a past that had suddenly resurfaced, threatening to unravel the fabric of their shared existence. Under the dim light of their living room, Sharon began to unravel the threads of her past, each word heavy with emotion. I met Edward right out of college, Sharon began, her voice quivering. We were young, in love, and thought we had the world at our feet. He was passionate, a dreamer, always chasing the next big idea. Jason listened, a storm of emotions brewing inside him. And then, he urged softly. Sharon took a deep breath. Then the accident happened. It was a terrible night, a wrong turn on a slippery road. I was thrown from the car. I woke up in the hospital, alone, confused. They told me Edward didn't. Jason frowned, confusion etched on his face. But he's alive, Sharon. How could they tell you he was dead? Tears streamed down Sharon's cheeks. I don't know, Jason. It was all so chaotic. I was in shock, grieving. I couldn't face going back to our life without Edward. So, I left. I changed my name, moved away. And you never thought to check. To be sure, Jason's voice was a mix of disbelief and pain. I was scared, Jason. Scared of facing the truth, scared of what I might find. I wanted to forget, to escape the pain. Sharon sobbed. Jason sat back, his mind racing. And then you met me. Yes, Sharon whispered. Meeting you was like a breath of fresh air. You were kind, stable, everything my life with Edward wasn't. I fell in love with you, the life we built. I convinced myself that the past was gone, that I deserved this new beginning. But it was all built on a lie, Sharon. A lie, Jason said, his voice breaking. How could you hide something like that? How do you think I feel? Learning my wife's life is a fiction. Sharon reached out, but Jason pulled away. I'm sorry, Jason. I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was burying a dead past, not hiding from a living one. Jason stood up, pacing the room. This changes everything, Sharon. Edward is here, in this city, believing his wife is dead. And here you are, living a lie. I know, and I'm so sorry. I was wrong, so wrong. But I need you to believe that my love for you is real, Sharon pleaded, her voice desperate. Jason stopped, looking at her. I don't know what's real anymore, Sharon. I need time to think, to process all this. As Jason walked out of the room, Sharon sat there, her world crumbling around her. The past she had tried so hard to escape had caught up with her, shattering the illusion of the perfect life she had built with Jason. The night stretched on, filled with the deafening silence of a love thrown into turmoil. The days following Sharon's revelation were fraught with tension and unspoken questions. Jason grappled with his feelings, torn between the love for the woman he knew and the betrayal he felt. Sharon, meanwhile, was a shadow of her former self, consumed by guilt and fear. Jason decided to confront the situation head-on. I've been thinking, he began one evening, his voice firm yet weary. We need to bring Edward into this. He deserves to know the truth. Sharon's eyes widened in fear. Jason, no, please. I can't face him, not after all this. It's not just about you, Sharon. It's about doing what's right. He's been living a lie too. A lie you created, Jason said, his resolve clear. After a moment of heavy silence, Sharon nodded, her voice barely a whisper. Okay, I'll do it. I'll face my past. Jason contacted Edward, inviting him to stay with them under the guise of offering support and rehabilitation. Edward, still unaware of Sharon's true identity and believing her to be Jason's wife, gratefully accepted. When Edward arrived, the tension in the air was palpable. Sharon was a nervous wreck, her eyes darting between Jason and Edward, who seemed oblivious to the undercurrents. Welcome, Edward. I hope you find comfort and recovery here, Jason said warmly, though his heart raced with anxiety. Thank you, Jason. It means the world to me, Edward replied, his gaze drifting to Sharon. And you must be Jason's wife. It's a pleasure to meet you. Sharon forced a smile, her voice shaky. Welcome to our home, Edward. As days passed, Sharon cared for Edward, her every move filled with trepidation. Jason watched, a silent observer, torn between his desire for justice and his empathy for Edward's plight. One evening, as Sharon was in the kitchen, Jason sat with Edward in the living room. "How are you finding your stay, Edward?" Jason asked. "It's been a blessing. Sharon's been so kind, and you've been a great friend," Edward replied, unaware of the storm brewing around him. Jason nodded, his mind made up. "Edward, there's something you should know." Before he could continue, Sharon walked in, her face ashen. "Jason, don't." But Jason continued, his gaze fixed on Edward. "Sharon isn't who you think she is. She was your wife, Edward." Edward's face crumpled in confusion and shock. "What? That's impossible." "No, Edward. I'm here. I'm your Sharon," Sharon confessed, tears streaming down her face. The revelation hit Edward like a tidal wave, and he was speechless, his world turned upside down in an instant. Sharon knelt before him, her sobs filling the room. "I'm so sorry, Edward. I thought you were gone, and I couldn't face the truth. I ran away from everything, including you." Edward, still reeling, looked at Sharon, then at Jason. "I need time to process this. I don't understand how this could happen." In the weeks that followed, the house was filled with a heavy silence. Sharon's deception, now out in the open, had changed everything. Edward grappled with his newfound reality, while Jason struggled with his own sense of betrayal and Sharon, realizing the magnitude of her actions, decided to turn herself in to the authorities for her past misdeeds, including falsifying her identity. As she prepared to leave, she faced both Jason and Edward. "I'm sorry for all the pain I've caused. I hope one day you can both find it in your hearts to forgive me." With Sharon gone, Jason and Edward were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives, bound together by a strange twist of fate and a shared sense of loss. But in that loss, they found an unexpected friendship, a bond forged in the fires of betrayal and heartache. The departure of Sharon left an unmistakable void in the house, a silent reminder of the intricate web of lies and truths that had entangled the lives of Jason and Edward. In the wake of her confession and subsequent departure, the two men found themselves navigating a complex journey of healing and forgiveness. One evening, as they sat in the living room, the air thick with unspoken thoughts, Jason broke the silence. "Edward, I know this has been unimaginable for you. If there's anything I can do to help." Edward looked up, his eyes reflecting a deep sadness tinged with gratitude. "You've already done so much, Jason. Just having someone to talk to, someone who understands. It means a lot." Jason nodded, his own heart heavy with mixed emotions. "I can't pretend to know exactly how you feel, but I do understand betrayal. Sharon, she was a part of both our lives in ways we never imagined." Edward sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I keep asking myself, how could I not have known? How could she just erase our life together?" "It's hard to see when someone you love decides to wear a mask," Jason replied. "I loved her too, Edward. I loved the person she pretended to be." The two men sat in silence, each lost in their reflections. The bond of their shared experience, though painful, had brought them closer. In the weeks that followed, Jason dedicated himself to helping Edward with his rehabilitation. He arranged for physiotherapists to visit, and together, they worked on Edward's physical recovery. "All right, Edward, let's try a few steps today," encouraged the physiotherapist during one of the sessions. Edward, gripping the parallel bars, took a shaky step forward. "I never thought I'd be doing this again," he muttered, determination etched on his face. "You're doing great. Just take it one step at a time," Jason cheered him on, standing close by. Bit by bit, Edward's strength returned, and with it, a renewed sense of purpose. Jason watched, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. Despite everything, Edward was fighting back, reclaiming his life piece by piece. One evening, as they sat together, Edward spoke up. Jason, I've been thinking a lot about what happened. About Sharon. And I've realized something important. Jason turned to him, curious. What's that? I've realized that holding on to anger and bitterness won't change the past. It only poisons the present. I'm choosing to let go, to forgive her. Even if I can't forget, Edward said, a newfound peace in his voice. Jason nodded, deeply moved. That's a brave decision, Edward. And I think you're right. We both need to find a way to move forward, to heal from this. As the days turned into weeks, their conversations grew deeper, filled with reflections on life loss and the unexpected twists of fate. In each other, they found an unlikely ally, a friend who understood the depths of their pain and slowly, the house that was once filled with secrets and lies became a sanctuary of healing and hope. And as they healed, both Jason and Edward discovered that sometimes it's through our deepest wounds that we find our greatest strengths. And the year was drawing to a close, and the first snow of the season had blanketed Willow Creek in a serene layer of white. Inside Jason's home, the fireplace crackled with a comforting warmth, casting a soft glow on the two men seated before it. The room was filled with a peaceful quiet, a stark contrast to the turmoil that had once reigned. Jason, staring into the flames, broke the silence. It's hard to believe how much has changed this year, he mused, a reflective tone in his voice. Edward, now more mobile and looking healthier, nodded in agreement. Life is unpredictable, isn't it? We plan, we dream, and then in one moment, everything can change. Jason turned to look at his friend. But you know, Edward, in all this chaos, I've learned something important. We're more resilient than we think. We can endure, adapt, and even find new beginnings. Edward smiled, a hint of melancholy in his eyes. Yes, new beginnings. I never thought I'd get a second chance at life. But here I am, feeling more alive than... The conversation shifted as Jason shared his plans for the new year. I'm thinking of expanding the store, maybe even starting a community project here in Willow Creek. I want to give back, make a difference. That sounds like a great idea, Edward encouraged. And as for me, I've been thinking a lot about what I want to do next. I think it's time to start a new chapter, maybe even write a book about my journey. The fire crackled, and the warmth seemed to envelop them in a cocoon of comfort and camaraderie. The shared experiences of the past year had forged a bond between them that was unlikely yet unbreakable. Jason glanced at Edward. You know, this ordeal with Sharon, as painful as it was, it brought us together. In a way, I'm grateful for that. Edward nodded. Life has a strange way of bringing people together. Through loss, we found friendship. It's something I'll always be thankful for. As they sat in comfortable silence, the clock struck midnight, signaling the arrival of the new year. They raised their glasses in a quiet toast to new beginnings, to healing, and the unexpected friendships that life can bring. The fire's glow reflected in their eyes, a symbol of the warmth and hope that had grown in their hearts. They understood that the road ahead would have its challenges, but they also knew they wouldn't face them alone. In each other, they had found a brother, a confidant, and a reminder that even in the darkest times, there is light to be found.